It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I'm your host, Brian Beatty, and thank you for joining me this morning as we talk for the next hour about the housing market here in Charleston. And if this is your first time tuning in, this is a show all about real estate. I like to take national, regional, local news, apply that to us here in the Low Country, and then I like to talk about my opinions and my view on the housing market, my experiences and stories. As somebody that's been doing this for the past 11 years, my team and I have sold about 1,000 homes in the Charleston market, and I've been in the top 1% of agents here since 2009. I don't say that to boast. I just say it to let you know that I've got a good pulse on the market, and I like to share that with you guys. I like to help inform you on the market, educate you on the processes, and maybe create a different way of thinking about certain things so that when it comes time for you to buy or sell or invest in real estate, you're armed with that information. You can make an informed decision and hopefully get the best deal possible on something to buy, sell, or invest in. That's the whole goal here. So if at any point in time you'd like to reach out to me, you want to have a private conversation with me off air about your interest in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, I invite you to give me a call personally. My number is 843-345-1273. That's my cell, 843-345-1273. Or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. You can learn more about myself, my team, look at our listings, look at our sales, learn more about our marketing, and of course, 2.4% listing commission to help you sell your house. There is not an agent in this market doing the number of sales that we're doing for that percentage on the listing side. So 2.4% listing commission to help you sell your home. Go to listingsincharleston.com for more information. I have a lot of information that I want to share with you over the next hour. I'm probably not going to get to it all. It's an exciting weekend. Obviously, the big news is Donald J. Trump being inaugurated as the 45th president to the United States. And a lot of buzz, a lot of media buzz surrounding that. And, it's interesting that, 8 years ago, there was all this media surrounding the housing market. It was really at the forefront of the issues being discussed by the candidates for presidency. And it's really kind of taken a bit of a back seat this year. It's a little bit, I wouldn't call it a non-issue, but it just doesn't carry the weight. It doesn't carry the buzz or the sting that maybe some of these other topics do. And so I want to talk about the impact of Trump taking office as it relates to the housing market. I talked about this back in November. I want to revisit some things. I want to change a few things that were statements that were made by some experts in the real estate industry as it relates to how he's going to impact the market. I also want to talk about where we ended last year. Charleston Trident Association of Realtors does a really good job of providing us with some statistics and some information about the housing market. And at the end of every year, they put together a year in review report. And I'm going to put that on my website. A lot of good information there. I certainly can't get to it all. It's about, I think it's 16 pages. So listingsincharleston.com if you want to see it. But I'm going to read through a few things there just to give you guys an idea of where we were last year. In comparison to 2015, we're actually going to go back 5 years and look at how we've changed over that course of time and what to expect next year. And then we're going to talk about this kind of weighing the pros and cons of renting your home versus selling your home. Surprisingly, and I do mean that, surprisingly, I've had a lot of conversations with people this year that say, we're thinking about just renting the house out, not selling it, and selling it in a few years. So I want to just talk about the pros and cons associated with that, give you guys some things to think about if you've thought about that. And then at the very end, if we have enough time, I want to talk about a conversation that I had with a seller that went a little bit awry. I was basically labeled as somebody trying to underprice her house, and that it was a total greed-based recommendation on my end because all real estate agents are the same and all we want is a commission. We don't care about anybody except ourselves. So I just want to talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about the public's perception of a real estate agent and how I think at times we are at fault for why the public perceives us the way they do. So if we have some time, we'll get to that. I'll share that story. But let's talk about Trump's inauguration. Let's talk about his impact on the housing market. When was the last time we had a real estate developer take the office of president? I don't know. I haven't checked my stats or my history. I'm not a huge history buff, truth be told, especially as it relates to politics. This is not a political show. This is a real estate show. However, politics will play a big part in how our markets will change and will be shaped in the months and years to come. They always have, they always will. So I want to talk for just a little while about what I think is going to happen here, or at least kind of the buzz associated around Trump's inauguration. So, you look at a few months ago when Trump became president-elect, and the financial markets kind of took a quick dive, and then shortly afterward they recovered. And it's kind of interesting because at that point in time, I was looking at some articles. One of the articles by Wall Street Journal actually was entitled "Donald Trump, the Housing Market's Latest Threat." There was another article from Money Sense, and it said higher mortgage rates are on the way, and Trump's to blame. It begs the question, of course, at that point in time was, well, are interest rates going to rise? And they did. Was it Trump's fault? No. A lot of people would like to think that. It's easy to blame stuff on the president. We had a lot of issues over the past 8 years that can easily be blamed on Obama. Obviously, there's more at it than just somebody to assign blame to. Volatility in the financial markets, tend to cause investors to flee to safety. They have been really kind of focused on mortgage-backed securities, and so that's what's helped to keep mortgage rates low, which is obviously great news for buyers or people that want to refinance. And there were, people from like Realtor.com as an example. Jonathan Smoke is the chief economist over there, and he said, I'm not really expecting much of a change in the trajectory on interest rates because, the economics have overall stayed the same. Well, obviously, interest rates are now above 4% right now, and people have freaked out about that a little bit. I will say that it's turned into a positive, not a negative. A lot of people are ready, willing, and able to buy something right now. There's a lot of activity in our market. I can't honestly think of a busier January that I and my team have had in the 11 years that I've been doing this business. It's like somebody flipped a switch, and now everybody that was on the fence is now ready to go. So I think they've kind of gotten over the fact of, we're going to wait to see how the election turns out, and then they realize, it doesn't really matter. I want to buy a house. And guess what? Interest rates are still low. If you're used to 3.5% for any prolonged period of time, that becomes your sense of reality. That's what's normal to you. So, of course, now that they're above 4%, the media makes a huge deal over, whoa, interest rates are really high now. 4.25% is not a high interest rate. It's a fantastic interest rate. Talk to people that were paying double digits, close to 20% in the 80s, and they'll laugh at you. Now, I'm not pushing or sweeping under the rug the idea that it has now created an affordability issue for some people. It certainly has. We've been talking a lot about the first-time home buyer market, and I don't want to forget, of course, that we're centering this discussion around Trump and what he's going to do for our country as it relates to the housing market. But I think when you talk about things like first-time home buyers and the fact that now interest rates are higher and prices continue to go up in most cases across the board in the Tri-County area, and yes, it does have an impact on affordability, but affordability is still good. Interest rates are still low. Sellers are selling for the majority of what they want. They'll sell for as high as the market will bear. There are some buyers that will fall in love with the property so much that they will pay above appraised price. We had that happen multiple times last year on some of the sellers that we represent, which is always a fun thing to say and cool for the seller to experience because they get to set a record for the highest price in their neighborhood, whether it be for size or whatever the case might be. But for buyers, I think one of the benefits to having Trump come into office here is the impact that he's going to have on the regulatory side of things. I think that, he's going to look at, you can boost the rate of home ownership really in two different ways. One is through the demand side policies, which are things like financial deregulation. And then the other side is the supply side, which is like reducing local impediments to building new supply, development. Trump's a developer. Do you think he's going to focus on that? I certainly do. So we're looking at decreased regulation as it relates to obtaining a mortgage. We already saw the FHA loan limit for conforming loans go up. We've seen private mortgage insurance, commonly called PMI, go down. I think it's at 0.6% right now. It's still, if you get an FHA loan, my understanding, of course, is that you have to pay that through the life of the loan, which I do not agree with. I don't think that's right. I think once you have 20% equity in a house and you can have an appraisal support that, you shouldn't have to pay a PMI anymore. I don't think that's a penalty you should have to carry with you for potentially 30 years. But that's just my opinion. But I do think that, overall, Trump is going to bring some regulatory relief and regulatory certainty to the financial services industry, which is going to make credit more available to people that have had trouble with that. We've already talked to some lenders that say, hey, we've got programs now where rather than going off of the adjusted gross income on your tax returns, we can actually look at bank statements. Huge news if you're self-employed. Or huge news for anybody like myself that doesn't like paying taxes. I like to write off as much as I can because I like to keep my money, not give it to the government. So there have been some changes already, which is really positive. But I think overall, we're going to see looser standards on the obtainment of a mortgage. I think we're going to see some regulatory relief in the financial services industry, which is going to impact the ability to obtain a mortgage or offer different mortgage products. And then, of course, I think that we're going to see some of those impediments to building new supply change vastly. I think there's going to be credits for affordable housing, more so than there have been in the past, which is a recurring issue, something that they didn't focus a lot on this presidency, but something that's always kind of been an issue. Well, not always, but it's been an issue for a long time, especially in Charleston. Charleston's an expensive place to live. Certainly not as expensive as some areas of the country, but overall, a pretty expensive place to live. So it begs the question, how are we going to get some affordable housing up and built and cater to those that have good jobs, but just can't afford to buy a home because the price of real estate in a convenient location close to where they work or where their kids want to go to school or whatever the case might be, it's just not there, or at least it's not there in supply that we want. So I think it's going to be an interesting year as time unfolds and as Trump kind of lays out his 100-day plan and his 1 and 2 and 4 year plan. I do think that we're going to see significant impact in the housing market as it relates to encouraging development and encouraging the loosening of some credit standards to obtain a mortgage. I think it's going to be good news. I think we've got green pastures ahead. Time will tell. Certainly there are those out there that think that this is a nightmare and that the world's going to end and that this is the beginning of the end for the United States. I assure you we will go on. We will make it. So, again, not to get too far down the rabbit hole here as it relates to politics and my views, but overall, I think that we're going to see some reform. I think that we're in line for that. You look at some of the things that were passed with Dodd-Frank, and you look at some of the, CFPB, which stands for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which Trump wants to change vastly or maybe do away with altogether. And we'll see. There's not a lot of information right now to report. It just hasn't been brought to our attention yet. But I will tell you that I think that the home builders will benefit greatly from this. So I think we're going to see an impact as it relates to new construction. And, housing is a lagging indicator. Things in the housing market don't then change the economics of our nation. The economics of our nation change, and that affects housing, if that makes sense. So as new construction hits the market, then there's going to be more supply. There are going to be more people buying. There are going to be more people speculating as they invest. They'll take the money they earn. They'll put it somewhere else. We'll have new construction workers. We'll have more labor. We'll have more materials. There will be a spillover effect for the new construction that I think will happen as a result of Trump. But we'll wait and see. When we come back, I want to talk about where we landed last year. What happened in 2016 as it relates to 2015 and the years past, and what do we have to look forward to in the years ahead? So all that and more as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Again, reach out to me if you'd like to talk about real estate personally. I can be reached at 843-345-1273, or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com.
Stay tuned for more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. WTMA! Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, and thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. I'm your host, Brian Beatty, and we do appreciate you being here over this hour to talk about the real estate market, talk about what's going on with all the media surrounding Trump's inauguration as president. We just went through all of that, so if you missed it, you can find any version of my show that I've ever recorded on my website, listingsincharleston.com. Of course, if you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, you're welcome to visit that site, listingsincharleston.com. Learn more about who I am and how my team operates and what we do to sell homes, what kind of homes we've sold. And if you're thinking about selling, 2.4% listing commission to sell your home. Lowest I've seen out there for anybody selling near the amount of homes that my team and I are selling. So we want to help save you some money. We want to pass those savings along to you and get the job done for you so we can get you moved on to the next stage in your life. If you'd like to call me, if you're more of a phone person, that's quite fine by me. Call my cell phone. My number is 843-345-1273. That's 843-345-1273. That's my cell. So I want to talk about 2016, how we finished up. The Charleston Trident Association of Realtors puts forth a market update toward the middle of every month, but then right around the middle of January is when we get to see the full report of how things finished for the year prior. And so as they do, they put together a fantastic housing market report. I'm going to put that on my website. There's a lot of information on here. I'm certainly not going to get to it all, but listingsincharleston.com is where you can go to see this. I'll post a link to it. So what I want to talk about is just kind of I want to talk about a few different segments, really. I want to talk about sales, listings, showings, distressed properties, which we don't really talk about that much anymore because there's not very many of them out there. I want to talk about new construction. Then, of course, we want to talk about price. And, as I mentioned, with a new president from a different political party taking office this year, there's, I think, going to be quite a few changes to federal policies, and we'll see how that unfolds over the next few weeks, months, years. But I don't think many people are expecting it to stay the same, especially with somebody that has a deep history in real estate development. So we'll see what happens here. But what I will say about 2016 is that it exceeded some experts' opinion of how our market was going to turn out, but it wasn't a landslide change, I would say. I'd say it was a measured success. If you look at things like what impacted our market, we're still struggling with low inventory. We now have slightly higher interest rates. We still have excellent demand among buyers. We've got some construction that's hitting the market that's changing that inventory, but it just doesn't seem like we can catch up quite yet with the demand that's out there. So first thing I want to talk about is sales. Pending sales, or properties that went under contract, increased almost 9% last year. We had closings that increased a little over 9%. We had 17,720 closings in 2016, which is a huge number. That's far more than we were doing several years ago. So that's exciting to see. If you look at listings, inventory was certainly lower this year. We had about 4,700 active listings on the market at the end of the year. And what's interesting is that if you look at the way real estate agents kind of construct their contracts, you hire somebody to sell your house, and it's okay, well, let's say we get hired in May or June. Usually people write that contract through the end of the year. So the listing agreement expires on December 31st. So every year, without fail, we have a huge number of listings come off the market, and then some go back on the market, some wait until March or April, some just decide not to sell. Some say, you know what, I'm going to rent it out, I'm not going to sell it. Some people say, look, we're just going to stay. We've decided we're not going to sell, we're not going to move. You get a variety of reasons there. But overall, inventory is still down. You look at something like distress sales. I used to do a lot of distress sales. That's kind of how I would say I built a name for myself in this market, is by doing a lot of short sales, a lot of foreclosures. I have a lot of experience in that field. I got licensed in 2006. 2008 was a hard year. So when I was 23, turning 24 in 2008. So I had to very quickly figure out how I was going to do this job and make some money and be good at it and support myself and my family. And so that's why I did foreclosures and short sales. It's where the market was. Well, now distress sales, which are short sales and foreclosures, only represent 6.2% of our market. That's down 17% from last year. We were almost at 30%, I think, in 2011, maybe 2009, but right around there. Almost a third of our market was distressed. Now it's basically, it's 6%. There's just not a lot of it out there. The percentage of distress sales, however, were really kind of targeted in three different areas. 20% of all distressed inventory was Folly Beach, 12% was the Hollywood Ravenel Megget area, and then 10% was James Island, believe it or not. And then it goes, Hanahan at 9, North Charleston at 8, Somerville at 7, West Ashley at 6. And that's of the total percentage of distress sales, by the way. So not a lot out there in terms of short sales and foreclosures. We still get a lot of calls from people saying, hey, I want to buy a short sale. I want to buy a foreclosure. And it begs the question, why? And of course, the answer why is so that they can get a really good deal on something. And in some instances, you can. But if it's a foreclosure, if it's a bank-owned home, and it's in good condition, and it's in a price range and in a location where homes are selling quickly, that bank is just not going to give you a good discount. They're just not. They're going to sell it for pretty darn close to what it's worth because they can and because buyers will pay it. Gone are the days where you could buy something for 20, 25, 30% below fair market value. I mean, unless you are so lucky that you are in the right place at the right time and you find somebody on their worst day willing to do whatever it takes to get out of a house, you're not looking at percentages even close to that, unfortunately, if you're a buyer working with a seller. They know for the most part that it's a seller's market. They know their options. They know that they could go to somebody and say, hey, I could put this thing on the market and have it sold in 5 days if I underprice it by 5%. So I think it's hard if you're a buyer looking for stuff like that. So that's kind of the overview on distress sales. Now, new construction is interesting. We had about 3.4 months supply of new construction. Not a lot of supply. Those properties are selling very quickly. They are selling for at or above the new construction price, which is always kind of tough to calculate because they list those properties at the base price, and then anything that you add to the property in the way of upgrades increases the price, which tends to slant the numbers. But if you look at the areas in which new construction was most prevalent, Johns Island had 46% of new construction market share last year, followed by the Goose Creek Moncks Corner area, which had 39%, and then Upper Mount Pleasant had 36%, Hollywood Ravenel Megget 35%, Somerville 22%, and then it dips way down from there. But 46% in Johns Island. If anybody's driven through Johns Island, they're probably not too surprised by that number. So let's talk about showings for just a second, because showings actually didn't really change all that much in 2016. I know that we always talk about all the activity that's going on, but the median number of showings until something went under contract actually did not change last year from 2015. It's 11 showings until you get a contract, which is why we say that, look, if we've had 20, 30, 40 showings on your home and we have not had an offer yet, there is a reason why. Unless your home is in a very unique area or it in and of itself is a very unique home, if we're getting 20, 30, 40 showings, we haven't had an offer, we haven't had somebody come to the table and say they want to buy it, there's a change that need to be made there. And that's, I think, what a lot of agents are kind of shying away from right now. They're so happy to get the listing because they're so hard to get that they don't want to say anything that would jeopardize their ability to keep that listing. It's a problem in this market. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it because of all the listings that should be selling that are not. I don't think that the majority of agents out there are having those tough conversations with their sellers to say, this is what we need to do. I think that in some instances, the communication is lackluster. It causes the seller to doubt whether or not the agent is actually giving them good advice, realistic, truthful advice, or if it's just, hey, I need you to reduce the price because I need to get this thing sold so that I can move on to somebody else. And here's what I'll say as an agent. Sometimes that's okay to think that way to an extent, because look, if you've hired me to sell your house and I'm giving you truthful, factual information that leads us to believe your home is not going to sell at the price you're asking and we need to make an adjustment, yet you don't want to, look, it's your goal. It's your time frame. It's whatever you want to accomplish, and it's my job to help you accomplish that. But if you just don't care what happens, there's no motivation to sell, you're not taking people's opinion into account, you're not monitoring the feedback among buyers, you kind of have this whatever attitude, then yes, at times agents will shut you out because they're trying to get a job done. They don't get paid until it closes. If you don't care whether or not it closes, then sometimes the agent you have hired isn't the right agent for you. Maybe it would be better for you to work with another agent that says, hey, keep it on the market for 5 years. I don't care. I'm just glad I have a listing. That's not really how we run our business, but there are plenty of agents out there that will take a listing just for the sake of having a listing, because if it doesn't sell, it doesn't matter, because at least they're getting buyer leads from your house. So something to take into consideration. Let's talk about price, because everybody loves price. And bear with me as I get my piece of paper here. Okay, here we go. So I want to go back to 2012 and talk about the change from 2016 to 2012 in some of these areas. Charleston County has increased their median sales price by 36% since 2012. It was up 6% last year. Berkeley County is up 25% from 2012, and it was up 5% last year. Dorchester County is up 19% from 2012, and it was up 5.5% from last year. But I'm looking at some of these numbers here. I'm looking at some areas that have had dramatic changes since 2012. I mean, Daniel Island, 43% increase since 2012. Downtown Charleston, 36%. North Charleston, 60%. Hollywood Ravenel Megget, 59%. James Island, 33%. Johns Island, 40%. Lower Mount Pleasant, 40%. St. George, Rural County, 62%. Upper Charleston Peninsula. If you've been looking at Wagner Terrace, you've noticed how many people have flocked to that area to buy property, either speculatively or because of the way in which that area is changing. 63% since 2012. Upper Mount Pleasant, 44%. Wando, Cainhoy, 47%. West Ashley, 36%. A lot of change over the past several years. That's a big increase in potential payments. It's a big increase, by the way, in equity. So a lot of people bought several years ago. Now they're ready to move into that next chapter of their lives. They're ready to move up into a new property. And they've got the equity now to take care of that, to sell their home, make enough money to apply the equity they've earned to the down payment for their next house, and which is what I did. I made enough money in the home that I bought and renovated in 2011 to sell that home, take my equity, use it as my down payment into a home that was worth twice the value, and the only thing that changed was my payment on a monthly basis, which is a pretty attractive thing if you're somebody that wants to sell and then buy something. So a lot of positive energy out there in the market right now. Prices were up last year, not by huge double digits in hardly any area. In fact, the only double-digit increases I'm seeing are Folly Beach being up 11%, Isle of Palms being up 11.5%, and St. George, the rural Dorchester County area, up 13%. Other than that, everything is single digits. So good news, certainly not what we've seen in some of the years past, but very attractive numbers overall for somebody that wants to sell. And if you're somebody that wants to buy, yes, it's still a seller's market. Yes, they are still, for the most part, in the driver's seat. But if you want a good deal, they're out there to be had. We are talking to a lot of people right now that are going to be selling their home in the next, week to 90 days. If you're a buyer, you're struggling to find inventory, give me a call. We've got probably 100 people that we're communicating with right now. Not all of them are going to list, of course, and not all of them are going to list with us, but we at least know of them. So if you want an idea of kind of a snapshot of what's to come, give me a call, 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. 2.4% commission to help you sell your home on the listing side. Nobody else is offering anything that low to that sells the amount of homes that we do, and that's just the bottom line. So we're here to save you some money and help you through that stage in your life, and we'd certainly love to earn your business. When we come back, we're going to talk shortly about some of the pros and cons associated with the difference between renting a home and selling a home. We've had some people say, I think we're going to rent our home and wait, and we're going to see what happens. So some things to think about if you're going down that path yourself right now. So all that and more as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues right here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Broadcast Saturday mornings at 9 and Sunday mornings at 10 on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. WTMA. Expert news and views on the Lowcountry real estate scene. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I always like to take a little bit of time to say thank you to those of you that listen to this program and rely on the information and the experiences that I share with you so that it can in some way, shape, or form help you, whether it be the decision-making process or the planning process or really just educating you on the housing market and some things to think about. I try to be as real as possible on this program. It's not a salesy show. It's just an opportunity for me to share my experiences with you, help you become prepared so that when you buy something or sell something or invest in something, you've got the education, you've got a clear thought process behind how to maximize the results associated with buying, selling, or investing. And that's what the show is all about. So thank you very much to those of you that listen. If I can help you, if you are thinking about buying or selling or investing in real estate, give me a call, 843-345-1273. That's 843-345-1273. Or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Remember, 2.4% listing commission to help you sell your house. So that's about a 20% savings on the listing commission just to help you get your home sold and help you move on to the next stage in your life. So I was a little long-winded on my first two segments, I do admit. So I'm going to keep this rather short, but we've had some folks say that they've thought about renting their house out for the next few months. Kind of wait to see what the housing market does before they decide to make a move. So I want to give you some things to think about if you're going to rent your home out. First of all, is the rent, so you're going to have to move somewhere, of course, so is the rent going to cover your mortgage payment and your expenses? Obviously, people just look at the mortgage payment as the main factor in whether they're going to rent their home out or not. They sometimes forget that their insurance is going to change. They sometimes forget that their taxes are going to double or in some cases almost triple. They forget about the maintenance associated with things. If they're going to get a property manager, they're going to take 10% of the gross rent. All of these things need to be factored into so that you can get an accurate financial picture of what it means to rent your home out. Now, one more ancillary benefit to renting your home out, of course, is that you now get to depreciate your home for tax purposes, which can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. It depends on capital gains and how you want to do all that with your account. I'm not an accountant. I'm not going to go into that, but you do get to deduct the depreciation on your rental income, rental real estate. Now, let's say that you think prices are going to rise over the next several years, and that even if you rent your home out and have a little bit of a loss, the appreciation will account for the loss that you're going to sustain. So let's say you own a home and it's $100,000, and it's going to cost you $1,000 a year to keep a renter in that property. You know, you get the rental income, then you deduct all your expenses. It's actually going to cost you $1,000 a year. This is theoretical, of course. So let's say that 10 years later, it's cost you $10,000 to keep that property as a rental. Well, how much is that property going to be worth 10 years from now? If it's worth $110,000, was it worth it to rent the property out? What I think you need to really calculate here, which is challenging to do because you have to put a value of your own time on this, is are you the type of person that gets stressed out when people potentially damage your property. I haven't met a renter yet that was so perfect that they left the property better than when they found it. I know they're out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bad-mouthing tenants because I know they're out there and there are plenty of great ones out there. I just have never seen one. It's just me. But I know they're out there. So are you the type of person that tends to freak out about condition and panic over repairs? The other thing you need to ask yourself is, can you look at this from a business transaction, and can you potentially evict a family who fails to pay you? That's something you got to reach down deep and ask yourself. Let's say that you don't get a property manager and it's just you and you're managing your property, and you've got a young family and they've got 4 kids and they're struggling to make ends meet and they haven't paid you in 4 months. What are you going to do? Are you going to kick that family out of your house? That's something you need to ask yourself, and I think you really need to dig deep and determine whether or not you're prepared to do that or not. If you're not, then guess what? It's going to cost you a lot more than $1,000 a year in that scenario I just played out for you. One thing you have to calculate is something called vacancy loss or lack of payment. Is it realistic to assume that you're going to collect 12 months of rent every single time? Or is it more realistic to assume that it's going to take a little time to find the next tenant? Is it realistic to assume that not every tenant's going to pay you every time, every month? So those are some of the things you really need to think about. Now, there can be some fantastic benefits to rental property. I own several of them. It is a investment strategy of mine, but it's a long-term investment strategy of mine. I think that renting a property out short-term is not terribly attractive, in my opinion. You have to put a value on your time. If you're the property manager, you haven't hired a professional to help you, are you okay with getting calls at 11 o'clock at night because a tenant flushed something down the toilet they weren't supposed to, and now they've got water all over your floors? Or, hey, this is wrong and I need you to come fix it, when you know the tenant can do it. They just want you to do it because it's not their house, it's yours. Those are the little things that I've picked up on. And look, I'm a real estate professional. I could manage my properties. I choose not to because my time is better spent doing my day job. And I would much prefer to pay a professional to do their job so that it doesn't take away from my job or my family. So that's my decision. I think it's well worth the 10%. Others might not agree, but you need to ask yourself some of those deeper questions. Are you prepared to spend time fixing up your property? Are you prepared to evict a tenant? Do you have the financial capacity to make repairs? What if your roof gets a leak and you need a new roof? What if the HVAC system goes out and you need a new one and it's going to cost $8,000? Those are all the things you need to think about. So if you're thinking about the idea of, do I rent or do I sell? Give me a call. Let's at least work up a financial scenario for you so that you understand where the dollars and the cents are going. And then let's really determine the value of your time and what could be better spent with either your time or the money for other things. And that's something I'm happy to help you with. I do it all the time for folks that are considering this path. I'm not here to convince you either way. I'm just here to help you look at all the different angles. So if you'd like to do that, give me a call, 843-345-1273. Or go to my website and contact me that way, listingsincharleston.com. If you are thinking about selling, 2.4% listing commission to help you sell your home. If you're in a position where you either need to sell it or rent it, whichever comes first, we can still work with you. So listingsincharleston.com or 843-345-1273. When we come back, I'm going to tell you a really quick story about a conversation that I had with a seller and something to take away from that. Really more so for me than maybe for you, but an interesting story nonetheless with maybe a lesson or two in there for you guys. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Visit Brian Beatty's website at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, and thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. And I appreciate almost the hour that you've spent listening to me rant and rave about the housing market here. We've talked about a lot so far. Talked about Trump's impact on the housing market, what we think might happen, which is speculatory at best right now. Well, we'll see what happens over the next few weeks, months, years. Talked about the 2016 annual report about the Charleston real estate market. And that, of course, will be on my website, listingsincharleston.com. If you'd like to go there, a lot of information. Obviously, I can't get to it all. It's about 16 pages, but a lot of good info on there if you want to know how our market shaped up compared to 2015, and then going all the way back to 2012. A lot of good info there. And then what I want to talk about for just a few minutes is something that I'm seeing happen more and more and more in this market. And I've mentioned it in the past, but it just seems to be kind of a recurring issue that I want to bring to your attention. So I had a meeting with a seller, and I won't go into too many details. And it happened a little while ago, so I think now it's probably a decent time to share the story. But had a meeting with a seller. They were very nice, happy to meet with me. I went over my marketing plan, everything I do to sell my home, went over my experience, so on and so forth. Then it gets time to talk about price. So we review the comps, and I'm looking at each individual property as it relates to theirs, and we're looking at pricing history, length of time on market, any concessions that may have been offered by other sellers that sold comparable to theirs, the price, the photos, everything. It's very in-depth when I meet with somebody and we talk about price, because that's probably the most important thing for people's price. What am I going to walk away with if I sell this house? And so we spent a lot of time on it. So I spent a lot of time on it. And then I went through about a 30-minute rampage on the seller's behalf, where she just proceeded to tell me how I was just like everybody else and only in it for, the money, only in it for the commission. I didn't care about her at all. She wanted a price that was about 20% higher than what I quoted her. And, my property sold for 98% of asking price. They have for years. I'm good at pricing property. Trust me, I know what I'm doing when it comes to pricing a property. I'm certainly not 20% wrong. But I heard her, just yelling, borderline yelling at me. And she's venting, and that's fine, I suppose. But I said, ma'am, I appreciate it. It seems like we're not going to be a good fit, and I appreciate the opportunity. I hope you have a nice day. And I excused myself from the meeting and have not called her since. But what I want to get out of this story is a point across, in that there are agents out there that I think are doing the market in general a disservice by telling sellers the price they want to hear just to get a listing. And I don't want to be too hard on real estate agents. Look, I'm a real estate agent. I have to play nicely with other real estate agents. We all play in the same sandbox. And I respect the vast majority of agents out there. However, there are agents that either struggle with pricing so much so that they'd rather just let the seller call the shots, because in some instances, frankly, the seller's more knowledgeable about price than the agent, which is bad. That's not a good thing, by the way. Or the agent is so nervous to tell the person the truth about what they really think it will sell for that they don't get the listing in the first place. So what do? They say, okay, well, yeah, let's try that price and let's see what happens. You're absolutely right. There's nothing wrong with trying. And so they try, and they get a few showings, and they say, oh, look, it's working. The marketing's working. The market's responding to our home at this price. And then a month goes by, and then 2, then 3, then 4, and they haven't sold, and the price hasn't changed. Because the seller has now been coached to believe that if I ask this price, then reason stands to believe somebody will come along and will be willing to pay it. Now, don't get me wrong. In some instances, that may be the case. But more often than not, what's happened is, because of the lack of inventory, you got a showing because you were in a certain price range, and then when the buyer walked through it, they said, not for this price. And if the agent probably isn't doing a good job of saying, well, at what price would you be interested? How can we get a deal done today? They're just letting him go by. They didn't like it. They move on to the next one. So what I want to caution you with is that when you're interviewing an agent to help you sell your home, it is not just about the marketing. It's not just how many homes have you sold. You have your list of questions, but you have to hire an agent that can price your home effectively based on previous experience. So I encourage you that if you're selling your home and your agent just kind of shoots from the hip with regard to pricing, they're not showing you specific comps and how your home compares to those comparable properties, then in my opinion, it's a red flag. I think that you should at least get a second opinion. So if you're thinking about selling your house, obviously it's incredibly important to price it correctly, because that's what's going to help it sell for the most amount of money. And if that's something I can help you with, give me a call, 843 345-1273, 345-1273, or go to listingsincharleston.com. And remember, I'll do it for a 2.4% listing commission. Thanks a lot, Charleston. Enjoy your weekend, and thank you for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 10. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.